Hello everyone. In today's beginner crochet tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to make a granny square. We're doing it with super bulky yarn so it's easy to see. We're going over each individual stitch as well as the pattern itself.
Before we begin, let's just go over a couple notes. Supplies that you'll need are yarn and a corresponding hook. So you can use any yarn that you have. You just want to make sure that you're matching the millimeter size to whatever it says on that yarn label. You'll also need a small pair of scissors and a blunt yarn needle. It's really important that you use a blunt yarn needle so that you don't accidentally felt your work as you go. The plastic ones are super affordable, they're like $1, so it's worth saving yourself a headache to get one of these ones. Other things to know before we get started is that the chain 3 that we begin each round with will count as a stitch. There are some patterns that use standing stitches, but because this is meant to be an absolute beginner tutorial, I'm going to show you with the traditional method of using a chain. Another thing to note is that when we join a new color, we're going to be doing that with a slip stitch. So I will show you how to do that. Let's jump in and look at how to make these little beauties. When starting or ending the yarn, we want to make sure to leave a tail end, which is just a length of yarn that is about 6 inches long.
This will allow us to secure our ends by weaving them into our work later on.
To begin, we are going to create a slip knot. To do that, you want to take the tail end of your yarn and wrap that around your fingers. Put your thumb just on the X there, and that will create a circle. Then place your tail end underneath that circle and pull it through. Now you just want to pull the working yarn, which is going to tighten the slip knot. Then this loop is adjustable simply by tugging on the tail end or on the circle. I'm just pinching the knot there and moving the tail end up and down. So at this point, what you want to do is get your yarn on the hook. When you do that, make sure that your yarn is on the shaft of the hook and not the throat right here, okay? Because if you do it down here and you tighten it, that's going to be way too tight and your tension's going to be off. Okay, so now you'll want to find a way to hold the yarn. There's a few different ways to do this, but the end idea is that you want the working yarn coming over the top of your finger. So I hold my yarn like this, which is a little complicated for beginners. If you're interested in seeing how to do that, I'll put a link in the description box and then also in the top right corner. Okay, so now we are ready to chain. I've got my working yarn coming over my pointer finger. I'm going to pinch the slip knot, and then I've got my hook ready to go. So to chain, what we're going to do is we're going to begin by chaining 5. To chain, we hit the yarn with the back of our hook, wrap it around. That's called a yarn over. Let me show you again. So you grab the yarn like so, and then you pull it through. That's one chain. We're going to do it again. There's 2 chains. Again, 3. You can move the yarn and then move. So I was originally pinching down here on the knot. Now I'm moving my fingers up to keep it nice and tight. We've got 3 stitches. We're going for 5. So I'm hitting the yarn with the back of my hook. The hook is grabbing it, and then I'm pulling it through. So that's 4 and 5. If you're struggling with that part, I have a more in-depth tutorial on chaining that you can check out. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to create a circle, and we're going to do that by slip stitching into the first chain. And you might be wondering, well, how do you know which stitch is which, right? Well, what's on the hook never counts as a stitch. That's going to be your next stitch. So you begin counting these V's. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so you might be wondering, well, what's that? That's the knot from the slip knot. So that's not a stitch, that doesn't count. So when you go into the first stitch, you can go in here through the middle, or if you take a peek at the back side, we've also got 5 bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can also go into that part of the stitch. I just think it's a little bit easier for a circle to go in through the front. So we're going to do that. We insert our hook into the first stitch. We then yarn over, okay, and pull through both loops. Now that closes it. And you can see here we've got our tail. We're going to ignore that. That will get sewn in later on. What we're going to be doing, we're ready to work round 1. So now we're going to work into the center of this ring that we just created. If you're familiar with the magic ring or the magic circle technique, you can also do that to begin your granny square. If you're not familiar with that, I'll again link in the description box below and in the top right hand corner if you're curious to look at an alternate way to begin. It's just a little bit more difficult for beginners, so we're going with the chain for this first granny square tutorial. Okay, so again, we're working round 1. All stitches in this round are going to be worked into that ring. We're going to start off though by chaining 3. Okay, and then now we are going to again work our stitches into the center of that ring that we just created. Our stitch that we're going to be using for the majority of this pattern is the double crochet. So we start that by yarning over, just like we were going to chain, but instead of chaining, we're now going to put our hook into that ring. So we insert our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through, and then now we are going to yarn over. You can see at this point I have 3 loops on my hook. We're going to yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through 2. And that completes our first double crochet. So you can see here, the reason I chained 3 to begin was to bring the hook up to the point where the rest of the subsequent stitches are worked. And so that just helps to keep this stitch more even, and then the chain 3 brings us up to the height of the double crochet. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've chained 3, we've got 1 double crochet, we are going to do another double crochet. So we yarn over, insert our hook into the ring, yarn over and pull through. We've got 3 loops on the hook. Then we yarn over and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So that completes our second double crochet. Now what we're going to do is chain 2. 1, 2. Then you can see I'm just sort of turning the ring as I go around, right? We're kind of working our way around this ring. So now we begin the repeat for this row, and that means we're going to do this part a couple times. So we're going to put 3 double crochet. We're going to yarn over and do 3. If you are needing more help with the double crochet, I of course have a more in-depth tutorial that will show you how to do that. You can go back in this video and rewind it and see what I was doing, but if you're struggling with getting this stitch down, I recommend making a swatch of it, and that will really help you to understand the mechanics of the stitch. But one more time, yarn over, insert into the ring, yarn over, pull through. We've got 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, so we've got 3 double crochet. Then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. Then we're going to repeat this 2 more times. Okay, so 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. Okay, so if I just pull this here, you can see I've got the bottom of my square. So if I do it once more here, that's going to complete the square, and I'll end up back with my hook over here. Let me show you. So I just chained 2, and now I'm going to do 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Again, I'm going to chain 2. And to complete round 1, what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch into the top of the chain 3. So you can see here's our first, second, and third chain. I'm just going to go under both loops, just like so, and then we are slip stitching to join. So that means I've inserted my hook and then going to yarn over and pull through, and then pull through again. Okay, so let's take a look at this. You can see here how this is so just adorable and cute and puffy. With smaller yarn, obviously it looks a little bit different, but with the super bulky, it's really easy to see what's going on, which is why I like to use super bulky yarn to show you guys how to do these techniques. Okay, so at this point, because we're going to be changing colors, we are going to fasten off. There is, of course, many different ways that you can complete these squares, so if you've seen another tutorial that tells you to carry on or do something different, know that there's just different variations on how to do it. I believe that this is the easiest way for beginners. So what we're going to do is make sure we cut a tail of about 6 inches. Then just go ahead, you've got that loop there, and then what you want to do is pull the working yarn through, and that locks that first round in place. Now you will need to weave these ends in, and you can do that now, or you can do it at the end. That is a preference.
At the end of this video, I'll show you an example of how to do that, and I'll also link to a more in-depth tutorial.
Okay, now we are ready for round 2. To connect the next yarn, again, we want to leave a tail of about 6 inches, and you can begin in any corner. Let's just talk a little bit about the anatomy of the granny square here. You can see that we've got our circle ring that we made. We've then got our clusters of 3 double crochet and then 2 chains. So the 2 chains are the corners right now. So you can choose any one of those to go into. It's really arbitrary. What you're going to do is stick your hook in, grab the yarn, pull that through, and then what I'm going to do is just slip stitch that in there. Now I know it seems a little bit precarious, and some of the beginners are probably like, what do you mean? That's just dangling there. I promise you, once you weave this in, it's going to be nice and locked in place, okay? So now what we're going to do, we've slip stitched our new color in, and now because that's kind of like the first chain, we're just going to chain 2 more. So we've got 1 and 2, and you can see that looks like our chain 3 now. So we are going to now put 2 double crochet into this corner. There's our first double crochet and our second. Okay, beautiful. Now we are going to chain 2, just like before. 1 and 2. And then this is all in the same space here, the same corner space. We're going to go back in and we're going to put another cluster of 3 double crochet. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we are just going to chain 1. And then here's the repeat for this round, okay? So we're going to do 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet, and then chain 1. And we're going to do that all the way around. So let's put we're working into the corner again. Let's put our first cluster of 3 double crochet. Now we're going to chain 2. We're going to put our second cluster of double crochet. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1, and we're going to go into the next corner here. So repeat, first cluster of 3, double crochet, there's 3, then we're going to chain 2, then we're going to put 3 double crochet, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, then we're going to chain 1, and then now in our last corner we're going to just repeat the same thing again. And you can see why these are so popular. They're very meditative, and once you get the pattern down, it's very easy to just do the repeat. So again, we've just chained 1. We're going into the last corner here, and we're going to do 3 double crochet. Then we're going to chain 2, 3 double crochet in the same corner, 2, and 3. So we've made our way all the way around, just wrapping up with a chain 1 there, and you can see I'm back to the chain 3. Hopefully you guys can see that. This yarn is pretty dark. I wanted to get something matchy, but now I'm thinking maybe I should have picked something less matchy, easier to see. It's a hard balance between being visually striking and just easy to see. Okay, so we're in the top of that chain 3, and now we're going to slip stitch by pulling through both of those guys there. And we can fasten off at this point. So I'm going to pull a long loop up that just makes it easy. I then make sure I have a tail of at least 6 inches. Pull that working yarn through. And now we're ready to go again for round 3. I do like to just straighten it out as I go. You can see just how beautiful that is. All right, so again, for the next round, you can start in any corner you want. I don't like starting in the same place because I don't want all my ends to be clustered into one spot. And you can see what I mean here. They're just sort of staggered. So now for the next one, I'm going to start up here. And that just, you know, when you're weaving in your ends, it does create a little bit of bulk. So again, that's a preference. You can start in any corner that you'd like. Let's grab that next color. Beautiful, right? Okay, so we're going to insert the hook into the corner we want to begin at. We're going to make sure there's a 6-inch tail, and then we just grab the yarn over, pull through. It's just a loop like that, so you do have to chain it to secure it, okay? And even then, it's a little wonky, so it's a little loosey-goosey until you weave it in, so you gotta just be careful. Okay, so we got that first one. Now we're going to chain 2. Oops, pop my hook back in, one more chain. All right, so now we're going to do 2 double crochet into that corner. Beautiful, super dark. Gosh, I hope you guys can see that. Okay, now we're going to chain 2. Then we're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochet right here in the same corner. 1, 2. Oh, my yarn is not wanting to come away from the ball. Okay, there we go. And then there's the third. And then you can see that this one's going to be a little bit different because we've got an extra space here. I can't just chain one and go all the way across to this next one. That would pull it so far. So instead we have to put a cluster of 3 double crochet right there. And this is also the beginning of the repeat. So what we're going to do is chain 1, and then we're going to put 3 double crochet into this chain 1 space from the previous round. So to do that, we just work into it, just like we've been doing the corners. Okay, so there's our first double crochet. Here's our second and our third. Now we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to work into this corner stitch here. So there's a lot of tails in the way. Let's move these out so you guys can see what's going on. All right, so there's our corner, and then here's where the repeat began. We got chain 1, we're going to do a cluster of 3, chain 1, and then we're going to work cluster of 3, chain 2, cluster of 3, and then we repeat that all the way around. Okay, so here we go, working into the corner, our first double crochet, our second, and our third. Then we're going to chain 2 and put another cluster of 3 in that same space, same corner space. There's 2, and here is 3. And repeat. Chain 1, cluster of 3 in the chain 1 space from the previous row. 1, 2, and 3. Then chain 1, cluster of 3. There's 1, 2, and 3. Then chain 2, 1, 2. Then another cluster of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Whoops. Okay, chain 1, 3 into the chain 1 space from the previous row. 3 double crochet. There's our second double crochet and our third double crochet. Now chain 1, and then a cluster of 3 into the corner. There's 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to put a cluster of 3 into the corner over here. Same corner space. 2 and 3. Okay, so you can see here we just have one more cluster of 3 to do in the chain 1 space from the previous row. So to do that, we do as we do before. We're just going to chain 1, put a cluster of 3, double crochet, and then we chain 1, and then we find the top of that chain 3. So here's our first, second, and third. Just go into that stitch as best you can. You can see I've got both loops under there, and then I slip stitch by yarning over and pulling through both. Okay, isn't that beautiful? Oh my goodness. Lovely. Holy Lord. It's gorgeous. Okay, so 6-inch tail. Pull it through. Absolutely lovely. Let me really quickly show you how we weave in the ends. You can see this is just barely a 6-inch tail, so I'm pushing it here. That's kind of hard to get in, especially with the chunky yarn. You got to be careful. So I've got a super big, blunt yarn needle. Do not get a pokey one, especially if you have real wool, because it will felt as you work your way through. So you do have to buy a special yarn needle, but they are super cheap. They're like 50 cents if you get the plastic ones, okay? Definitely worth the investment to save you a headache. So let's pull that a little bit tight. I've just got my tail end threaded there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully work in and out of some of these stitches. So I am just making sure not to add too much bulk and not to split the stitches. See, if I go straight through yarn from the previous row here and split it like that, that's going to be really obvious to see. So instead what you want to do is work around the yarns. Okay, so get that through there. Of course I pulled it out because it's so short. And then just make sure to weave in and out some of these inner seam ones here, okay? You don't want to do any obvious weaving in and out of the outer ones if you can help it. Just a little something like that is more than sufficient. Okay, and then all you have to do, I like to pull it a little bit too tight, and then when I trim it close, it will, as I pull this flat again, sort of disappear into it. Right? So that's the idea. So you just want to repeat that for all of those tail ends, and you will end up with a beautiful granny square.
If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, please do comment below and I'll try my best to answer them. See you in the next video.